I'm hoping that, you know, we can make this class like deadly successful. That's the idea, and that you'll regard it as something that, you know, depending on your participation, obviously, you'll regard it as something that's really valuable. I'm telling you the stuff I've learned that I'm telling you about. It has been so useful to me that I can't really even communicate how useful it's been. It's been unbelievably useful. And, you know, partly what I'm going to explain to you, if I can, is why, you know, there are tenets of classical morality. And there's a variety of them, and one of them is, for example, don't lie. And, you know, that's a tough one, because you might think, well, you know, why not? Really? Why not? I mean, if you can set up a situation so that you benefit from an untruth, what stops you from doing it? You know, and Dostoevsky, in one of his most famous statements, he said, if there's no God, everything is permitted. And it's a takeoff on Nietzschean thinking too, and it's a problem that he thought would be the fundamental problem of the 20th century, and I think he was absolutely right. And it's a question very much worth thinking about. It's like, why bother with things that are moral? Why do things right? Is there even such a thing as doing things right? These are great questions, you know, and hopefully what I'm going to try to do with you guys is to show you what the consequence. I've been thinking about those things for, you know, it's almost 30 years, I guess, now, and I've got a ways, certainly a ways that has been satisfying to me, and I want to tell you what I've concluded, and then you can decide for yourself if you think it's useful. And one thing I would really like encourage you to do is, like, you should be skeptical about what I'm telling you. Really, like, you should question it. Like, I don't mean the kind of skepticism that's like this, because, like, you know, I'm not here to prove myself to you at all, and you're not here to prove yourself to me either. So you have to listen and you have to attend, but by the same token, I would say, like, I'm telling you things that I have tried to hammer to death. I've tried to see if they were wrong, you know, because that's how you're supposed to test ideas. You throw out an idea and you hammer the hell out of it, see if you can see if it's wrong, not whether it's right, because that's ideological thinking. And the things I'm telling you are things I could not disprove. They seem to stand up, and I've tried multiple tests, you know. So one of them is sort of a consilience test, and a consilience is a word that was defined by Edward O. Wilson. And when an explanation is consilient, what that means is that it's coherent across multiple levels of analysis, you know. And so I've tried to test the ideas that I'm describing to you. I've tried to determine whether they're logically coherent and appropriate at the level of general psychology and clinical psychology and neuroscience and narrative theory and religious thinking, and then also to see if they're actually applicable as practical realities in day-to-day life and in social life. And as far as I'm concerned, they stand up. That's been my experience. And I've also watched people over many years now try to apply them in their own lives, and all I've been able to see so far with my graduate students and so on is that it works. So, you know, hooray for that. And so we're going to try to understand some basic issues like what the utility of truth is. And that's a really important question. It's maybe the fundamental question. Is truth useful? And if so, how and why? And, like, man, we're going to go after that, especially with regards to verbal truth, because there's something magical about words. There really is something magical about them. And the way you use words determines the course of your life, and maybe more than that, maybe the course of everyone's life. So I want to explain to you how that can be true and what it means. So, you know, that should be relatively entertaining. And hopefully what else I can tell you is I'm going to throw out some key propositions. There's probably about 7 or 8 of them, and what I'm hoping is that you'll be able to use those propositions as keys that will help you unlock things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to consciously understand. And if you know some of these key propositions, when you see archetypal stories portrayed in front of you, and that happens all the time, like, I mean, all the superhero movies that have come out lately, there's, you know, hordes of them. They're tremendously expensive to make, hey? Hundreds of millions of dollars, those things. It's like they're all predicated on archetypal themes. You know, and I think it's of great interest to note that the most expensive artifacts that human beings produce, or at least among the most expensive artifacts that we produce, are precisely movies that are computer generated to tell archetypal stories. You know, and that's also the technological process that in large part is driving computer innovation, because the most demand that's being placed on things like computer chips is actually, you know, recreating reality, CGI reality, because it's the most complicated thing to do. It's just like, what the hell? Why are we doing that? What's up with that? Why would you spend $300 million making Iron Man? You know, there's a profit motive there, obviously, but everybody will go see it. It's like, what's up with you people? You know, you go see some dingbat in a metal suit fly around in the air. You know that's not true. It's like, what are you doing at those movies? You think, well, I'm entertaining myself. It's like, yeah, right, except why is it entertaining? And why is it entertaining to all of you? And why is it entertaining to everyone? You know, there's a reason for that. So partly what we're going to find out too is what it is about stories that attract our interest and why that is. And it's not merely entertainment. It's like the most potent form of learning that we have. So, well, anyway, so that's the goal. And during this as well, you know, I hope that you can articulate yourselves further and also come to some deeper understanding about the absolute essential nature of proper language use in spoken language and in written language, because you basically think and speak and write yourself into existence. And one of the things that means is you should be very, very careful with what you say, because you are literally bringing realms of reality into being through speaking, and you want to make bloody sure that the realms of reality that you're participating in bringing into being are the ones that you would actually like yourself and those you love to inhabit. Most profound ideas are pretty damn pessimistic, but this is one I think that's an exception to that, which is it is possible that you're constituted so that you have enough resources to deal with reality as it actually lays itself out. And one of the ways, and people have been thinking about this for a very long time too, is that one of the most effective weapons you have in that engagement is the capacity to pay attention. And paying attention, and it's another thing I've learned over the years, and that's been extraordinarily useful to me. We kind of conflate rational thinking with attention and sort of make attention like the ugly stepsister of rationality in some sense, because we never really consider it as a separate entity, because we are basically rationalists and we believe that we can deal with the world in rational ways. And I don't think that's really true, because I think the world has at its core, it's existentially irrational. There's too much of it that's absurd and arbitrary. But it is perfectly reasonable to draw a clear distinction between paying attention and thinking. And you know, Western culture has elevated thinking in some sense to the position of the highest deity, but I think we've got that wrong. I think attention is much more powerful than thinking, and that thinking should be the handmaid of attention. Because if you pay attention, you can pay attention to the things you don't know. And you can become incredibly powerful if you pay attention to the things you don't know, because you keep learning and learning and learning and learning. And you know, there's a New Testament injunction that goes along the lines of, you know, it's necessary to love your enemy. And I actually think that that's an existential hint. You know, if you listen to people converse, especially if they're ideologically minded, you have a socialist on one side and a conservative on the other. All they do is trade platitudes. There's no discussion. And the goal of the discussion is to humiliate the other person and to prove that your a priori stance is correct and that that person is incapable of conceptualizing the world properly. It's like, one of the most interesting things about running into people who think differently than you, if you pay attention instead of thinking, is they will tell you the weirdest bloody things, you know, the things you never possibly have thought of. And, you know, it doesn't mean that you have to fall over and agree with them immediately, but what the hell difference does it make if they don't think the same way you do? Maybe out of 10 statements, they'll offer you one that you wouldn't have conceptualized. And that's the difference between paying attention and thinking. And, like, people love to be paid attention to. You know, it's a currency. It's human currency is attention. And attention is an unbelievably powerful tool. You know, one of the things we'll find out is that the ancient Egyptians actually conceptualized attention as a god. And the god they conceptualized attention as was Horus. And you all know of Horus because you've all seen representations of Horus. The famous Egyptian eye, the single eye, that's a representation of Horus. And the Egyptians figured out, like the Mesopotamians had before them, that the highest human deity, which is like the most powerful set of human attributes, is to be associated with one, with language use. The Mesopotamians really nailed that, but even more importantly, with the capacity to pay attention and watch. And it's sort of suspension of judgment. It's like, you don't have to be right or wrong in the situation. All you have to do is pay attention and listen and watch. And then potentially a solution will emerge out of that. And look, half our brain is visual cortex approximately, you know, so paying attention, we're incredible visual animals. Paying attention really matters. It's the harnessing, that's visual attention in particular, but that's the harnessing of our most fundamental cognitive capacities. So, I also say that if you're capable of allowing your true being to manifest itself, so that would be your potential, that's also the best source you have of the kind of weaponry that you need to defend yourself against the inequalities and tragedies and horrors of life. Because you can reveal yourself, in a sense, by pursuing what's illuminated for you. And I can't tell you whether or not that's true, but it's a powerful idea, and it's a very old idea, and I think there's plenty of evidence that at least it is a, what do you say? It's plausible, yes, it's more than that, but plausible will do, because I can't think of a better word at the moment, but it's a hypothesis that has enough potential that it might be worth testing. And I would like you to test that sort of thing. Like, one of the things that I really encourage students in this class to do, and you can start doing this right away, is pay attention to what you hear yourself say. Like, just watch, pull yourself into two, detach yourself from your ideas and thoughts, and watch what you say. And at the same time that you watch what you say, watch how you feel when you say what you say. And what I'd like you to try to detect is, you'll notice, if you start noticing, that some of the things that you say make you feel strong and together and united, and other things that you say make you feel disunited and weak. And then I would say, quit saying the ones that make you feel disunited and weak, because they're false. And what you're picking up by the loss of strength associated with that utterance is the fact that there's something rotten in the state of Denmark with regards to that use of language. It's manipulative, you're trying to appear smarter than you are, you're trying to prove a point, you're trying to avoid something, like there's some game you're playing that's other than merely stating what you see to be true at that moment. And like, that's a different way to live, you know, because you can calculate and you can plan, and planning is useful, I have nothing against that, but you can manipulate reality so that it manifests what you want. Or you can decide that what you're going to do is pay attention and to call things as you see them, and to see what happens if you do that. And like, that's a real risk, right? Because you don't know where that's going to take you. So that's an act of faith in the Kierkegaardian sense. It's like, if you have faith in the truth, what that means is that you will say the truth. And that's a hard thing to do. You know, it doesn't mean that you can say whatever you want, whenever you want, regardless of the effect on other people. Or that you can use the truth as a baseball bat, which you can certainly do. It's a sophisticated, it requires a tremendous amount of sophisticated, it requires a tremendous amount of sophistication. But, you know, one thing you might think about is, well, if you are attempting to make yourself a mouthpiece of the truth, you have reality on your side. And then you might say, well, could you possibly have anything more powerful on your side than reality? And so it might not be a reality you want, or the thing that you would wish for, but you might think, well, you know, if you called things as you saw them, and you were very careful about that, maybe that would lead you through life properly. It's a very different way of thinking. And it is tied with this idea that there's something fundamental about the truth. So I would say, to start this, if you want, just pay attention to what you say. You know, and like you're detached from it. So don't identify too much with what you're saying. Because that's another thing that people do. They identify with what they think. It's like, what makes you think that you're thinking? It's like one of the things Jung said, which I really love. It blew me. It just flattened me when I first read it. He said, people do not have ideas. Ideas have people. And so, you know, I listen to ideologues talk all the time, and it's like, it's not them talking, it's some dead spirit of the past that's, you know, voicing its opinion through them. And you can tell when you're talking to someone like that, because you can predict everything they're going to say. So in what sense is that them talking? It isn't them talking at all. It's some collective, it's a collective voice that has appropriated them and convinced them that it's actually part of them. It's like, no, that's a devil. That's what that is. So just watch. You can try this experiment all on your own. Try it for a month. Detach yourself from what you say and think, and notice when you say something if it makes you feel more grounded and powerful or weaker, and stop saying things that make you weak. So, that's sort of like existential test number 1.